I talk a lot about this from the stage. The difference between being guilt based and shame based. I have no problem with guilt based. Guilt says I did, shame says I am.
Mhm.
And, when I am, it makes you feel like you're less than and that you're not a child of God and you're not privy to the beauty of life itself and joys.
The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guest, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Wake Up Your Soul. Today's guest is Ken Miller, and he's here to talk to us about how he went from rock bottom to millionaire. And he says he has jokes. So I'm super excited. I think this is going to be a very fun episode. Let's welcome Ken. Hi, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Andrea, for
Oh my
inviting me.
God. Yeah, thank you for being here. So, you just gave me your, like, really quick rundown of your story, which was fabulous, but let's go back. I mean, we'll
Mhm.
fill in a little bit more, and I'll ask some questions along the way, but let's talk about your father, your mother, and your birth, and just starting from there, because it's all really interesting.
So I'm 63 years old. I was born in 1962.
Okay.
We have this term now that we didn't even have 5, 10 years ago. I'm biracial. I didn't even know that. And at least I had this woman once call me mulatto. Are you a mulatto? I was like, man, I've never been called that. I've been called a lot of things, but I've never been called a mulatto. But yeah, I am. So my mother was a white teenage runaway in New York, from Queens, New
Okay.
York, and my dad was a black man who was a pimp and drug dealer. They got together, and I am the byproduct of that relationship. My mother was
Which
a
you said was a relationship, you were saying
it
it was.
was, it
Yeah,
was,
okay,
it
yeah.
was. It was a relationship. I didn't know that for many years because I didn't meet her for the first 50 years
Okay,
because I
wow.
was put up for adoption at birth,
How old was she when she had you?
17,
S seven
17,
So she ran away then probably around 16?
16. Yeah, she was 16, 17,
Okay, and
and
how old was your dad at the time?
35.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he was not nice. He was my that was my father, and
I'm, like,
he
sitting with it. Wow, okay, yeah,
wow.
alright.
Yeah, and you gotta understand, this is 1962. You
Yeah.
got my sister, whose mother was Jewish, impregnated in 1952,
Wait, say
and
that again?
so he's fathered 3 children with white women,
Okay.
and as a black man in the '50s, that's, like, unheard of,
Uh-huh.
okay? So I have a sister, 1952.
Okay.
Her mother was Jewish, and then
Okay.
I have a sister, her
Okay.
mother was another Irish teenage girl. They're all teenage girls,
Okay.
and because of the environment that he was in, he has a tendency to prey on
Yes.
individuals, and it just was to come full circle in my story.
Alright.
So I was put up for adoption. I went through foster homes for my first 6 years, which is an experience in itself. It really formed me and how I looked at the world because I knew I didn't have a mother. That's the
Mhm.
one thing I knew. I did not have a mother and that I was unwanted and unloved. And so when I had the opportunity to be adopted by my adoptive parents, Irene and Sam Miller, I grabbed onto that and I was adopted by them We went to upstate New York. And then my father, unfortunately, was an alcoholic. He was a violent alcoholic. He was to later shoot my mom 6 times and then come to shoot me, but the gun jammed. That's another story
Oh
that
my
we'll get in. We're
god.
gonna have some resilience. It's all in my book also.
Oh my god, I need a cup of
So,
tea.
this is the incredible thing. So you're born with some intelligence. I truly believe this biologically, but I had not had opportunity to bloom that. So my first year when I was adopted, I couldn't read and I couldn't write. I'm in first grade. I couldn't tell time and I couldn't tie my shoes.
Mhm.
And so my mother sat me down with phonetic cards, 3 by 5 phonetic cards, TH, PH, phonetics, and taught me how to read. And I fell in love with reading. And so by the time a year later, I'm in second grade, I'm reading at the sixth grade level. And I kept,
Do you think your jump in reading was just from I'm just curious because I know parents I do have a lot of parents, I think, that
sure.
listen as well. Do you
Mhm.
think that was just from repetition of reading and reading and reading?
No, no, it's innate.
Okay,
It's a lot of it's biological. I'm intelligent.
okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
biologically, so I have 2 sisters. We're all adopted mixed race children, all different mothers,
Uh-huh.
okay? All different adoptive parents.
Yes, yes.
One is a retired English teacher and one is a retired professor,
Mhm.
and I'm an Ivy League graduate.
Yeah. So
What are
the
the chances of that happening?
so
I
you're
believe so you have nature and nurture.
for sure.
So I
Yeah.
had the nature of intelligence, and then I had the nurture of a mother who ended up
Mhm.
working on her doctorate, my adopted mother.
Okay.
I had a master's from Columbia's Teachers College, ran schools of nursing, okay, as the principal or the dean of schools of nursing. So I grew up around academics and schooling, but that's the nurture part.
Mhm.
If she hadn't taught me how to read, it doesn't matter how
Right.
intelligent innately I am. I have to
Mhm.
still be exposed.
Yeah.
So by the time I'm 17, I'm what they call a National Merit Scholar, and I go to off to college, and I only applied to 3 colleges: Oberlin, Harvard, and Dartmouth. I didn't have no clue that I might not get into college. I only applied to 3. I didn't know that. Didn't even think this is 1980. Anyway, I got accepted by all
Did you
3.
know at that time that you were applying to some of the best schools in the
Yeah, of
country?
course,
Okay.
of course. Yeah, my
Okay.
mom went to Columbia. So
Okay.
my mom got her master's from Columbia University. There's 2 great schools of education, University of Chicago and Columbia Teachers College. And
Okay.
so she got her master's from Columbia's Teachers College. So she understood the Ivies and
Okay.
she wanted me to go to the Ivy. And the only ones I really liked were Harvard and Dartmouth.
Okay.
And I got accepted all. I went to Dartmouth because I hated cities, hated cities.
Okay.
So I grew up in the country, moved up to Alaska. I'm 12 years old, but my father's a violent alcoholic, and I'm the brunt of the violence, only child. So a lot of situations happen of violence. We laughed, we hid out. My senior year, half of my year was hiding out from my father, literally hiding out from him. I was in so much fear of him.
Mhm.
So I go off to college. I'm damaged when I go to college, emotionally damaged when I go to college, and struggled. I struggled not so much academically, struggled just as feeling comfortable in my own skin. I didn't know
Mhm.
who I was. I was a weird kid. So I go off to nobody else. I know none of the listeners felt like they were weird kids at age
I was
17.
weird. I still think I'm weird.
No, no, no. No, you gotta understand how weird I was. So I go off to Dartmouth from Alaska, 'cause when I moved there when I was 12, so I go off from Alaska. I got a Jerry curl, which is this curl you have in your hair that had gone out of style like 2 years before on the East Coast. I didn't know this. I have a jean jacket that has all heavy metal bands on it, okay?
Okay.
And I'm hanging out with, like, these white conservatives. They're like, "Would you be in the Dartmouth Review?" Sure, I'm just so naive. I'm a virgin. I can't drive. Okay, I am so goofy, it is ridiculous. Okay, yeah, I knew you were gonna laugh.
I'm a
And I'm
virgin.
like, I didn't know what I was. So I go there, the
It
black
sounds
city
like you did know. You knew you were a virgin. You knew
I know what I was. I is what I is, okay? I know I didn't have a driver's license,
Yeah.
okay? I'm 17, had never drank, okay? I remember I walk into the dorm the first night and the dorm room is open on one of the rooms in the hall, and they're in there smoking weed. And I'm like, I go down the hall, I'm like, "Don't you know this is illegal?"
That's
They
not
just
allowed.
laughed at me. This is college. They just laughed at me. They're like, "Boy, are you crazy?" So I was very naive and very, yeah, I was very, very, I was a fish out. If I knew what I knew now, I really should have waited another year or two. I just didn't have the maturity going in there because
Yeah.
my mom had protected me because she's protecting me from my father
Yeah.
and also protected me from bad influences,
Uh-huh.
that could be around. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I go there, I join a fraternity, which means I joined a gang, and that's what it is.
Sorry.
So it's a bunch of men that have two things in common. We're chasing women and we're drinking. That's
Yeah.
our two main things that I did when I was in the fraternity.
And you're sabotaging each other.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're co-signing on bad behavior is what we're
Yeah.
doing. But this is Ivy League, so we're real protected too. So I do
Huh.
4 years of that. I barely get out after a lot of experiences, and I
A
come
lot of
out and I'm
experience.
yeah, a lot of experiences, a lot of depression. I was very depressed. I had a lot of problems with depression.
Mhm.
I had a lot of problems with anger, but it's internal anger. My thing was I used to punch out windows. I didn't punch people. I
Mm.
punch windows. And the windows won sometimes. I'm telling you, they won. Yeah, I'm bleeding. I remember I punched this window one time
Mm.
and I'm like, whoa, no blood. But it takes like a second or two for the blood to come.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, oh, cool. And then just all over. And so I get out and I remember I laid on the couch for about a month. My mom said, this is not going to work. And I go into my first treatment center. I do treatment. I stay sober for a couple years. Then I relapse. And then I was next 21 years on the streets. Okay. A year before I relapse, my father shoots my mother. He goes to her job, shoots her 6 times. And then he comes to my job to
Where
shoot me.
where did she work?
She worked in the college. She was the dean of nursing in
And
college.
what
Yeah, and she had a restraining order against him. He's not supposed to be on the property.
so was she by herself when this happened?
No, no, she was in her office, and her secretary called her and said, Irene, Sam's here. And
Mm,
she knows Sam's not to be there.
yeah,
And she said, and she didn't know. She said, well, tell him to come down there. Let me talk to him because he's not, it's a restraining order.
yeah,
And he came down there, pulled out the gun, shot her in the leg. She fell to the ground and shot her 5 more times as he stood above her. And the whole time he says, I'm going to kill that SOB Kenneth next. So she's worried about me
yeah.
when I get the call. But this is how damaged I was. And I don't know if people can resonate with this. The
Of
way I
course,
dealt,
this is gonna sound like a dumb
yeah,
question-ish.
go ahead. No
Did
problem.
did your mom die? I
No,
say okay.
no.
Okay, so
But,
maybe not dumb. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, you said she got shot in the leg. I'm like,
but
well, she
this is,
got
but
shot
it
6 times, could have been
yeah. And I'll explain what that means.
okay.
This is how damaged I was. Hear this part carefully. The way I dealt with trauma is I had no emotion. I would have no emotion.
Mhm.
I would manifest nothing because I'd seen so much, I'd done so much, I'd had so much happen to me that the only way I would have to disconnect. So one time I was walking with a good friend of mine named Gary Witherspoon on Dartmouth campus, and we saw this guy get run over by a truck, right? And literally, truck runs him over, goes down, of course, stops. He's laying in the road. Gary throws his books up and runs to the guy. And I just walked nonchalantly down there, not any emotion.
Hmm.
And the guy like sits up because he's in shock. He's been run over. And Gary's sort of crazy. And he's going, how many fingers? How many fingers? I'm like, Gary, I'll never forget that. But I have no emotion. So I'm at work.
But so are you still like that? Like, are you a serial killer? Is this what I'm
No,
hearing?
no, it's not psychopathic either. It's like it's psychopathy.
I'm
What
just
it
checking.
is, it's a learned mechanism to
Oh,
deal with
yeah.
trauma because it's too painful if I let the emotions come out.
Mhm.
And I also if I let the emotions come out, there's a chance that something external, I will displace that emotion onto someone else or something else.
Do you feel like it
Mhm.
came I mean, I feel like it could come from a few things. Do you feel like it came from I think you're gonna say no, but a place of, like, bitterness, a little bit like, "Well, yeah, I've seen worse, whatever, happens to me,
No,
it's gonna happen
no,
to you."
no, and I hear what you're saying, but it comes from a place of, again, it's a coping mechanism. We call them defense mechanism, but it's a coping mechanism. It's common,
Yeah.
and where we go inside and we feel nothing
Mhm.
because we have to shut down because what it comes down to is we're powerless. We don't have power over this situation. I couldn't when I was a child.
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to go into this topic.
Let's
So,
go there.
okay, you want to go there. So, after my freshman year, I came home. Remember, now I'm drinking.
Yeah.
So, I started drinking October of 1980. By December of 1980, I'm a full blown alcoholic within a month and a half of my first drink. Full blown, which means I cannot control the amount I drink once I start. And
Mhm.
under the influence of enough alcohol, I make really bad decisions.
Yeah.
I come home that summer from school. I go to the disco or club, and I find myself in a situation. I go home with this gentleman, and he rapes me. He literally rapes me. And I'll never forget that walk coming out of that
Oh
the
my god.
next morning, this feeling of being dirty, the feeling
Yeah.
you can't take a shower long enough, the feeling of shame, the feeling of guilt, the feeling of anger, because I was powerless. Physically, I was powerless. Under the influence of the drugs he gave me, I was powerless. But I put myself in that situation. And that was one of my big secrets for years,
Mhm.
for years. So again, I shut down when it was happening. And then I tried to bury it through drugs, alcohol, other things that I did. Okay. So remember, so I'm shutting down every time trauma happens. So I'm at work. Let's fast forward 4 years later. I'm at work
Yeah.
and I get a call from Roxy, her secretary, and she says, Kenneth, Sam shot Irene. Sam shot Irene. She's at Providence Hospital. And I go, okay. I hang up. I go to my boss. I said, hey, Bobby, do you mind if I take a little time off? My dad shot my mom. Same voice. He freaks out because he knows a little about my situation. Yes, of course. Oh, anything we can do? What? No, okay. I
You're
go
like,
to
"Are
the
you okay?"
hospital. I go to the hospital. My mom's lying on this gurney pre-op. They have a sheet over her up to her neck, and there's blood coming through the sheet from the bullet wounds. She's worried about me because all she knows is he's going to shoot me. Well,
Mhm.
I'm alive, so she's like thrilled. She's a grab her purse. She's mad because they cut her shoes. She had some beautiful shoes. They cut her shoes off. I remember that. But you got to understand, no emotion. Anything else I can do, mom? No? Okay, I'll be back after the operation. I take her purse. I go back to work. True story. Years later, we're in treatment doing family, and she told me how hurt she was. She thought I didn't love her because I had no emotion, no tears, no anger, no fear, nothing. That's how I dealt with trauma for years. That's how I dealt with it. I don't deal with it like that now. I don't have
And
a
when
lot of trauma.
and when did you wake up to that? When did you realize this isn't normal? This
Well,
is
I
not
knew I wasn't normal for a lot of years.
But,
So
like, when did you realize that was not a normal way of coping?
probably when my mom told me that, and that was in like 80, that was like about 4 or 5 years later. No, it was about 10 years later. We were in treatment. I was in a treatment. I did 14 inpatient treatment centers.
So
And
it
we
was
were
never
random.
it was never in those moments. It
No,
wasn't like when you found out she was shot and you
no,
were like,
n-
"Okay, my mom was
no.
shot."
I thought that was normal. I thought that was the best way for me to deal with it because it started when I was a child. And so what would happen is my father would come home drunk and he would look for something to set him off.
Yeah, so if you were a reactive person, that was gonna cause a bigger reaction in him.
Right, right. It would, and plus it's almost like I don't wanna give him the power
Mhm.
of
Get it.
knowing that he's hurting me, even though he was, but I
Yeah.
didn't wanna, like, give him that power, and so what I would do is and this is another thing, do this to this day, I try to create order in my life.
Mhm.
I try to create order, and
Mhm.
so my room was impeccable,
Mhm.
impeccable.
Just a way
My
of having
bed was
control.
impeccable. Yeah, because I thought if I control environments, I won't get beat.
Mm.
That's the best, 8 years old.
Or maybe you knew you were gonna get beat, but it was like, parts of your life are out of control. Don't you think it feels good
No,
to have a part in control?
no, you don't know you're gonna get beat. As a child, you can't you literally, you don't have the cognitive the ability to understand why someone doesn't love you.
I mean,
Why?
I've definitely had other guests and talked to other people, they knew it was coming. I mean, but that was very much a pattern, and they knew that they knew they were in for
I
it.
mean, bro, if I knew it was coming, I'd have ran away. Now, we did run away 10, 15 times, my mother and I. Get a motel, grab the dogs and the cat, and get a motel and hide out until my dad apologized well enough that my mom would go back. And for years, that was about the only thing I ever resented my mom for. My mom was the most beautiful, gentle, kind, loving woman in the world.
Mhm,
And I remember I asked her, I said, why'd you go back to Sam? Especially when we moved to Alaska. We moved from New York to Alaska.
mhm,
And she sat me down. We had like 3, 4 months. September of 1975 till December of 1975 was like the happiest part of my childhood, period, because my dad was out of the picture. And she said, "Sam wants to come back. Should I let him come back?" And
mm,
I begged her, begged her not to, begged her. And she took him back. And he was good for a couple years. He didn't drink. And then he went off. And then, we know what the penultimate was.
mm,
And I remember years later, I asked my mother, I said, "Why'd you take him back? Why?"
mhm,
And she goes, "Kenneth, it's the way I grew up in the 30s, 40s, 50s. You stood by your man, and it was a mistake." And I understand, man. I love you. Forgiveness not even asked for. I'm cool. Just see, you got to understand something. I'm in a position now. I understand everything.
mhm,
I understand. I'm 63. I understand my dad. I understand why he did the things he did. I really do. I understand it. I understand why he shot my mom. I understand why he beat me. I
mhm.
understand that. It really has very little to do with me.
Right.
But then I was the one of the reasons. The main reason was he had to share the love of this incredible woman with me.
Mhm,
She didn't want another child. My mother wanted, because she didn't have any children. So they went to the Wyndham Agency in New York City in 1968. And the Wyndham Agency is the oldest adoption agency in the United States. Been around since the 1870s, largest and biggest at the time. For $1,500, which is a lot of money back in those days, to adopt a black child. And they had picked out another black boy. And they're doing the paperwork. And my mom said there was like a mug book. And each page had like 8 pictures of black children because it's all racial back then.
okay.
And she said, "Kenneth, I saw your picture." And I told him, "Stop the press. I want this one. I want
Huh,
this one."
yeah.
And to this day, I love that story. But to this day, I feel sorry for the other child in a way because they didn't get my mom, but I got my mom. I got Irene.
Yeah,
And so, anyway, he had to share me, and she loved me to death. And I was scared of him. So we never really bonded well.
yeah.
But before he died, I'd forgiven him. We had sat down and talked. I talked about the situation, talked about what had happened, and I'd forgiven him. I've forgiven everybody who's
Mhm,
hurt me, everybody. I have no people I have a resentment toward. None.
mhm. So let's talk about
Mhm.
prison time. How did that happen? You said you've been incarcerated many times.
It happened. You commit what's called a crime.
What
And
kind of crime?
oh, what
There's lots
kind
of
of
crimes,
crime?
Ken, lots of
I
crimes.
know. So the 3 that they caught me for,
Oh, God.
one time I sat down, there's a thing called the Washington Blue Book. And the Washington Blue Book is the code of criminal statutes. And this was in 1990. This was early in my career. And I have done 26 different felonies. So I've done everything from armed robbery to
Mm.
kidnapping to attempted murder to pimping, prostitution, drug dealing, drug possession, assault. I'm convicted of burglary, a Class A felony, state of Washington, convicted of drug sales. I sold a $10 rock of crack cocaine. And then I have another felony conviction for drug possession. Those are the ones I were caught on. And then I don't even count misdemeanors. I don't count them. There's just a lot of
Yeah.
misdemeanors. I was, so you understand what type of addict I was. So in the beginning, I was an alcoholic first, and then I got addicted to crack cocaine in '88. And crack is so powerful that for me, because I'm so addictive in my personality and how I use drugs, that I go down real quick. So I either got to go into treatment or I get arrested. And so I could last maybe 3 months, 6 months before one of the two happened. So I did 14 inpatient treatments, but I'm a street level addict. Okay. So I'm in the missions, I'm in the soup kitchens, I'm homeless, I'm a panhandler, I'm a hustler. My main vocation was pimping, pimping and then prostitution. I was a male prostitute for years. So I did that.
I was going to ask when
Yeah.
you said that, were you
Yeah.
the prostitute
Yeah.
or were you okay, yeah,
So,
okay.
but I was a pimp of teenage girls, just like my dad, who I did not know. My father was that too.
And you're so smart, so
Yeah,
intelligent.
I
How
am.
how could you do these things and
Has
kidnap
nothing to do with intelligence. It
but
has nothing to do with it. What it did allow me my intelligence is that couple things. One, I didn't look like a thug. I didn't look like a criminal. So it gave me a pass sometimes. Okay.
but don't you think your intelligence should allow you the ability to decipher right and wrong?
Mm. It just doesn't matter. This is an addiction problem. So you understand what a drug is.
Yeah,
A drug is a chemical that changes your perception of reality. That's what a drug is.
yes.
Say aspirin, your knee hurts. You take 2 aspirin, your knee doesn't hurt. It's your perception. The reality is there's something wrong with your knee. It hurts.
Yeah.
Take the aspirin. I take crack cocaine. My reality is that I'm homeless on the streets. I take crack cocaine. I'm cool. It's all good.
So
I'm all
suddenly,
with it.
like, kidnapping is fine, like
But those are the situations that you will find yourself in due to that environment. Because the problem is, it's not even the problem. The truth of it is, as an addict on the streets, I need money to buy drugs. So I'm going to do one of two things. I am going to exchange a service or a good, so I can articulate this, for a desired result. Okay.
yeah.
So I turn tricks for money or I turn tricks for drugs. It going to the same thing. I want drug. Because then if I'm on a drug, I don't care. It's just a vehicle to a means, to an end. That's all it is. And I have I have done things, and again, I have no secrets. Remember I told you that.
So how okay, the
Yeah.
kidnapping, because as a
Yeah.
mother, I'm like, "This is
Okay.
traumatizing." How did you get involved in kidnapping? Did someone tell you, "I need you to go
So
kidnap and I'm gonna pay you?"
no, this is you most people don't understand what kidnapping is. Kidnapping is movement or you can almost say lack of movement under the threat of violence. So I'm in the motel room, what we call the mark. The mark is the individual that we are using for drugs or money to get drugs or money.
Mhm.
Okay. A square, a civilian. We run out of money. The ATM doesn't open up until, not the ATM, Western Union doesn't open up till 9 a.m. It's 7 a.m. I can get you, he owes us because we've sold him crack. He owes us $200. He's like, "Hey, the Western Union opens up at 9 a.m. and I'll get you some more money. I'll come back and bring you the money." No, you ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. Okay? That's kidnapping. Because if
Mm,
you move, we're gonna beat your butt. Under the threat of violence, that person cannot move.
okay.
And I've been in,
Mm.
unfortunately, multiple situations where we've done
So
that,
we're okay.
or we
Well,
made.
then, for clarity purposes, we're not talking about, like, snatching a child
No, come
from
on,
okay.
come on, come on.
Hey, you say, "Come on," but I don't know. You
No,
say,
but but I'm glad you're asking, because who's gonna be able to sit down and articulate this for you?
"You've got a
I was there.
questionable past, I gotta ask."
Yeah, yeah, and it was, the term I used, it was ugly. It was ugly emotionally, and it was ugly for me and for others and my loved ones.
Yeah,
I had a wife. I've had, my 3rd wife, but, don't it's not one died from cancer, okay?
okay. I'm
And
sorry.
then the other one I divorced because of my addiction, okay? And really to protect her in a lot of ways, to protect her from me, from me being under the influence. And then I'm married happily now. So I'm cool there. And I'm a good husband, okay, today. I am a good husband. And, you come out of all that, and this is what I try to do by coming on shows like you, is try to give people an understanding of individuals. All you hear is the headline, they did XYZ. Well, what was their thinking behind that? What type of person would do something like that? I tried to throw a guy off the 3rd floor balcony of a motel just
Mm.
because he was talking disrespectfully to me.
Whew. Don't mess with Ken.
Yeah, well, yeah, not on drugs. But today and I understand what you're saying, Audrey, but I'm a kind and gentle man today. I
Yeah,
am. The only thing you can't do is threaten my family.
yeah.
That's it. That's the only thing because I have spent years looking at this, because you got to understand, as a man of color, there are certain words you cannot call me. There's 3 of them. One starts with a B, one starts with a P, and one starts with an M. I'll just tell you the P one. It's punk. You can't call me a punk on the streets or in the penitentiary. That's a code word. And what that code word says
Mm.
is that if we're in the penitentiary, I call you a punk, that means you're gonna buy me commissary, or you're gonna clean my cell, or you're gonna provide services to me. Your
Mm.
choice. Or you're gonna fight me. Anybody who's been in would understand what they're saying. So that's great that I have these words that trigger. And that's what I call it. There's a script I have to play out because I've been trained to play out that script. I am not in prison anymore. I am clean and sober. Been 4 years. I go up to see my half brother, have my nephews who I haven't seen in, let's say, 15 years. He's 17, 18, 19 years old. We're going up the escalator in Nordstrom's. And he turns to me. He said, "Hey, Unc, were you somebody's little bee in the penitentiary?" And I said to myself, "You are the first person to call me that I have not swung on." I got to the top of the escalator. I called my brother. I say, "Hey, Mike, this is what Mike Jr. said." He said, "Put him on the phone." Because he knows, he understands that. He grew up in New York. He went to Vietnam, all that. And he came back like 2 minutes later. "Oh, my bad. I apologize. My
So bad.
bad." Because he didn't know. He doesn't know that world. And so I'm writing a book. I have a book right now that'll be coming out this year on respect and disrespect. So let's go to the getting well part.
Yes, let's get there.
Okay. And
The overcoming.
yeah. So I go into the penitentiary for the going in for the 3rd time to do years. And I get arrested September 22nd, 2004. October 2004, I have a conversation with God. And God says to me very simply is that it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be without discomfort or pain, but I will be there. We can walk through anything. Just have faith in me. I'm like, cool, let's do this. That's how I talk in my head.
Mhm.
And I have not used, have not wanted to use or imbibe. It doesn't mean that I've been perfect ever since because we might be able to go there and it is part of it. So it takes 3 months from being arrested to get into the penitentiary. Got to go through the
Okay.
court, plead guilty, all that. At least that's the shortest. You can probably do it. So January, I go in, and when I walk in that penitentiary, I say to myself, this is the third time I've been in this penitentiary. I say to myself, if I'm the same person coming out that I am going in, I'm going to have the same result I had the first two times. I said I
Mhm.
need to go work on mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. Because physically I was a mess, da 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 da. Mentally, I was a mess. I would read a paragraph in a book and I could not tell you the first sentence when I got to the end of the paragraph. I couldn't even remember what the first sentence. My brain
Mhm.
couldn't do that. So I ended up reading 110 books in 1 year. That was my record, 110. And I just read and did schooling, all that.
Mhm.
Most important was the emotional and the spiritual. Physical, I started lifting, did phenomenal. That's great. Then I went over to the counselor and started working on my secrets and my shame because I was shame based. This is, and I talk a lot about this from the stage, the difference between being guilt based and shame based. I have no problem with guilt based. Guilt says I did, shame says I am.
Mhm.
And, when I am, it makes you feel like you're less than and that you're not a child of God and you're not privy to the beauty of life itself and the joys.
Mhm.
And so I'm sitting here talking to this counselor, civilian. I did that for a couple years, did a drug treatment for a year. And so I got out and I went into looked at different spiritual, went to the Islamic, I went and did Christian, and I have a real strong faith, but it's really mine. And I can go into that a little later, maybe. Anyway, I get out after 3 years and I'm much better. And went out, got out, spent a couple years because it was in Reno, Nevada. And I was there when my mother passed away. That was a big thing, because I was there.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
she was glad. She was ready to go. She said, I'm ready. I mean, I was there with David. She said, I'm ready. And, now that I feel like you're good, I'm ready. She wanted to go be with her last husband. And so I was there for that and then moved up to Anchorage, Alaska for a bunch of years and then went from Anchorage back down here to Bellingham, started businesses, started writing, started speaking, and worked on me because I
Mhm.
had to work on me. And because you think you're well, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but it took me another 8 to 10 years. But I tell people all the time, and I say this on podcasts all the time. I've been well for about 5 years. About 5 years, I've been well.
Mhm.
And what that means is I don't work on Ken. I don't do self help. I don't do podcasts that I'm listening to get better.
Mhm.
I'm good with where I'm at. And how do you know that? Because I get the reflected back from others. And
Mhm.
then am I comfortable in my own skin? And what do I know that I'm doing that's giving out? And because I've freed up that capacity of time that I'm not working on Ken all the time, I can work with others. And I do. I mentor men all over this country. I have 12. At one time, I had 29 men. And I mean, I mentor those gentlemen. I coach people. I have a Black men's book study. I have a Black men's discussion group. I'm doing a Black men's retreat this summer in Atlanta. And then I go and I speak on stage for pay and I speak for free to
Mhm.
share a story of a lot about resilience and taking away the power of the secret and taking away that sense of being shame based and
Mm.
be feeling less than. So
How
that's what we've done. Go ahead.
I wanna ask, how do you get to this place? How do you start
Mm,
building up your resiliency, and how do you start overcoming these thoughts in your head? Because as an addict, right, it's gotta be insanely hard to get control of your mind.
It, so number one, okay, I love the way you phrased that. Number one, you can't put the chemicals in. You can't put these mind
But how
altering.
how do you stop that? How do you I mean, because people say they're addicted and they just can't stop.
Yes, they can. They can. Well, they can. That's easy for me to say, but I'm just saying that you can or you can't. There are some people who are going to die never getting cleaned up. I'm just gonna say that. I talk truth,
Mhm,
okay? Because I got people that come to me, "Oh, can my son or my nephew or my husband or what?" 'Cause I know a lot of people, okay?
mhm,
And
mm,
I say, within reason, do this, this, and this. But
mhm.
at some point, you got to let go. They may
Yeah,
die
like,
in
I'm
their
just
addiction.
I'm
Yeah,
wondering what can be said to these people, like you're saying, people that have a son or a brother or a husband or whatever, a friend that is an addict. What can be said? Not that we're trying to make this episode all about
right.
addicts, but what can be said to those people to maybe help them get clean and stay clean?
There's very little that you can do, especially an individual that's either not trained and or a family member.
Mhm.
The truth is, they've been effing you for years. I'm
Yeah,
serious.
yeah,
My mom put up 30 years of me being an addict.
yeah.
There's nothing that she said that got me cleaned up. Nothing. Nothing. Zero. What got me cleaned up is going into that penitentiary. What got me cleaned up is going into the courtroom, listening to Judge Hardesty say to me, the next time you come into my courtroom with a felony, which is stealing $51 in the state of Nevada, I'm giving you the habitual criminal statute, which is 25 to life. It's like striking out in California.
Mhm.
Okay. People say, did you believe him? I said, I still believe him. What do you mean, God believe him? He's in the Supreme Court now in Nevada, but I still believe him.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But that just said, ooh, there's some consequences. I'm getting ready to do 6 years on this little goofy $10 rock of crack cocaine. You think that would be enough. But
Mhm.
my thing is, when I had that conversation with God, I was like, okay,
Mm.
he said it wasn't going to be easy. So, Kenny, it's not going to be easy. Okay. And it wasn't always easy.
Mm-mm.
I definitely stubbed my toes. I never used, I never drank, but I did things that morally and ethically were wrong. This is how I speak, and this is how I look at it. There's only two things, there's God's will and there's your will. God's will is the next indicated correct thing to do, okay? And correct with a capital C. Your will can be in alignment, or what we talk about is congruence with God's will, or it can be not in alignment with God's will. And usually you're doing your will that's not in alignment with God's will because you're seeking pleasure or you're running away from pain.
Mhm.
And one of the things I had to understand early on is that there is pain in life, and you have to be willing to have the courage to absorb the pain to do the right thing.
Mhm.
It was painful to make amends to people I've hurt.
Mhm.
That's painful.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry. People crying, people are angry. People were like, and some people were so cool though. I had a couple people say, "Hey, Ken, thank you. Lose my number. Do not ever contact me again." I had
Yeah.
one person said, "If you died yesterday, it wouldn't be soon enough for me." I
Mm.
heard people. I heard people, but they
Yeah.
at least allowed me. I did my side. I cleaned up my side, and I hope they're fine. And probably they are because I'm just a blip on their life. I hope,
Yeah.
to this day. But anyway,
Well, I wanna
what did they
ask real
say?
quick
Good.
with what you're saying. Do you think that from what you've seen in the
Good.
prison, that finding God is something that needs to happen for more?
It wouldn't hurt.
It wouldn't hurt. Yeah.
No, it wouldn't hurt, but I'm not being facetious about that. Because you gotta understand, other people in prison use God as a crutch or protection. There's a racket in the penitentiary, and it's Christian. And let me explain this, and people who've been to prison will know exactly what I'm talking about that. So if you gang up with the Christian set, you're protected. We will respect that. If you go with the Islamic, Muslim, we'll respect that. But don't stray into prison politics or the yard. You see what I'm saying?
Mm.
As long as you stay there, but don't let us catch you doing dirt
Hmm.
because you said you're this, but you're acting this. Oh,
Huh.
that protection's off. Okay.
Okay.
See, the key to spirituality is this. This is my belief. I don't care if it's Buddha. I don't care if it's Allah. I don't care if it's Zoroastrian. I don't care if it's Christ. This is me talking. Does it modify your behavior? Does your spiritual essence, entity modify your behavior? Because if not, I'm cool. I'm cool. Mine modifies. So what does that mean? 99% of the time, I just do life because I do life well and I do it without friction.
Mhm.
Okay. 1% of the time, I pray. What's the right thing to do? Not the thing that's going to give Ken the most pleasure or make it the least discomforting for Ken, but what's the right thing for my wife? She's number one, my family, my grandkids. And what is your will, God?
Yeah.
Okay. You've identified it. Protect me. Give me the strength, the courage to do it. And I
I like
do it.
that.
And
Yeah,
I do it.
I like that. Yeah.
It works. I mean, I'm not telling people this is the old answer to everything. It works for me.
Mhm.
And I believe it's good thinking. I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of it's a little bit different, but it reminds
man,
me of there's somebody I have to interact with, and this person's personality, the way they come across, it just makes me pretty uncomfortable,
mhm,
and I just feel like they're a little bit angry inside and a little bit
mhm.
aggressive, and I just don't like it. But anyway, so I struggled to be around them, and the last time I had to go be around them, I actually just, like I prayed to God and I said, "Please let me see this person through your eyes."
Yeah,
Because I'm
child of God.
struggling, I'm struggling to be around this person and to enjoy this person, and so it was better, it was better.
Good.
The person was still, I still it was,
And they
I
may always, but the thing is there's a sense of doing right or doing God's will where you get on the other side and you're like, thank you, God. Thank
mm,
you. I used to have a mentee that every time I saw his name pop up on my phone, I'm like, oh, because he would drain me.
yeah,
It was discomforting dealing with, but I signed up to be a mentor to Black men. I signed up for that for free of my time and energy, and he needed me. And I would do that, and I'd get drained, and I'm like, "Okay, can you at least not have him call for a couple weeks?"
did it work? No,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, good.
Can we get to this millionaire situation?
Yeah,
You
sure.
became a millionaire, but how did you do that?
I started a business. It's very hard to do it when you're working for others. So I
Yeah,
started a business and did well my first few years. And then when COVID happened, you could look at it as a setback because now you can't see clients. But what it did is opened up the whole country to me because I was in Alaska. I wouldn't work with anybody in the lower 48. That's what we call it. And then I had to work with people online. I'm like, well, heck, let me open up the rest of the country and then hired some people and we've done very, very well ever since. And
what was
yeah.
that business? Or
Oh,
is
so
that
I'm a consultant. I consult with nonprofits and I write grants for tribes. My wife's Alaska Native, so we
okay,
write tribal. We got large federal grants for tribal entities, and
okay,
then I also consult on nonprofits. Then I speak around the country teaching on fundraising
yeah,
and profit.
okay. How did you even get started in that, though? I mean, you were a prisoner
It
before.
was a job. There was a jo I needed a job,
Okay.
and the job was a development director, which I didn't know what that was. And I go in there and he said, "Oh, it's fundraising for" it was for a soup kitchen, and I know about soup kitchens. And I'm like, "Sales?" And this is what I'm saying to myself, "Man, I've been in sales my whole life, legal and illegal, but I've sold it, okay? I can sell anything." I was a great panhandler too. I mean, probably the one of the best panhandlers ever. Okay, literally, because I
Oh my
just
gosh.
I can panhandle.
Okay. All right. Well,
Okay.
Ken, to wrap it up,
Mhm.
what are your words of wisdom for people that are trying to overcome the obstacles in life that they feel are holding them back? Because a lot of my listeners, I think,
Mm,
are people that are trying to level up their
right.
life in some way or another and just, wake up their soul. They're trying to find themselves and get to this place that they feel
Okay.
stuck. They know there's more for them. What's
And I wish we had more time to talk about it, but the solution number one, you've got to make a fundamental of seeking truth. What's real?
okay?
Not what's opinion, not what's feeling, but what is real. So it's self auditing.
Hmm.
You've got to understand what the problem is before you can solve for the problem.
Yeah.
And then you got to come up with a plan to solve for the problem. That would take 10, 15 minutes to tell you how I've solved for problems. I speak about what is a problem. Two plus two is not a problem. Two plus two equals is a problem. One's a statement, one states there is a desired result, equals that's the solution. So now we have a problem. How do we solve for that? And there's steps to
Mm.
solving for problems. But just number one, take a real strong look at what is real.
Okay.
And then the other thing is take away the power of your secrets. Find someone that you can trust. Go to a pastor and someone you don't even know or whoever, and just take away the power of those secrets, those negative secrets about yourself. Get out of the shame based.
Hmm. Okay. Well, can you tell people real quick where they can find you or connect with you?
Sure. Ken Miller 84 is my LinkedIn.
Okay.
And then Ken at kenmillerspeaks.com
Okay.
is an email
Okay.
or in my website. And feel free. And I answer everyone
Okay.
who contacts me.
Great. All right. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you.